Yes.
Could you give us a quick rundown on what happened from the time Israel withdrew from Gaza and blockade after that? They went back and also what were the blockades about? I mean, politically, economically, and then the stepping up. You can just sort of give us like a continuity of that. Appreciate that.
Are you talking about the so-called the ceasefire, the unilateral ceasefire that they after
No, it would
the?
be before that. I mean, from the time they supposedly withdrew from Gaza.
Oh, the unilateral withdrawal.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
Okay.
I mean, you notice the word unilateral keeps coming.
Right.
Unilateral withdrawal, unilateral ceasefire, unilateral invasion, unilateral this, unilateral that. That's part of the problem. Is there's nothing actually, even now, the unilateral ceasefire that they claimed, and then they withdrew unilaterally, and so that means that unilaterally they can attack again. And they actually have, since that time, have broken, according to one source, they've already broken the unilateral ceasefire 7 times already. The ceasefire that you're talking about was the one that was negotiated via the Egyptian leadership. And that was intended, actually, the idea was that the ceasefire would be a way to lift the siege, to alleviate the siege. And in fact, the siege was tightened. It wasn't made any easier, even though there was a ceasefire. So there was actually ample pretext to break the ceasefire by the Palestinians, but they didn't. And so now, even though they talk about the unilateral ceasefire, which has been broken 7 times by them already, the siege is still there. What is the function of the siege? The function of the siege is to impoverish the people and to make them dependent on handouts, and as I said before, money for rights. They want them to trade. When they say that Hamas, for example, they say that Hamas doesn't recognize Israel, right? They say that Hamas has been offering to accept Israel for a long-term ceasefire, right? They have been doing that. They have been talking about it. They've even talked to Carter about this, and he has relayed that actually to the sitting and the previous administrations. And so the whole idea, in my view, is the same as they did in the West Bank before Arafat was killed. Okay, before Arafat was killed, they bombarded the West Bank. They actually caused severe infrastructure damage to the West Bank. And basically, they placed Mahmoud Abbas in charge, and in fact, he's been working with them. He's been trading rights for money, which is exactly what. Not only the U.S. does this, by the way. The EU, the people in the Europeans generally are very, very strong supporters of the Palestinian cause. If you look worldwide, there is massive support for the Palestinian cause, except in this country, thanks to the media and thanks to what the governmental institutions here. And so we are an anomaly in the world. If you look at America in terms of the world of public opinion, we are an anomaly. Yeah, so that I think it is. So the function of why they want to work with Mahmoud Abbas is because he is willing to trade. And so now what they're trying to make it sound like is that Mahmoud Abbas can come to the rescue of Gaza, even though his term has run out as president. He can come to the rescue of Gaza with $2.1 billion, which they will give him in return for rights. That's what they want. No resistance, no.
On the 9th of January. I think if I understood you, 3 years ago on January 24, 2006, Hamas won the election. And it came as a surprise because Israel and the US were hoping that Abbas and his company will win the election. So they sent US observers, international observers. Everybody said the elections were, halal, if you want to call it. I mean, everything was, elections were good, but the results were not good. So, because the results were not good, a siege was put in Gaza. They start not allowing food to come in regularly, electrical supplies, and they also start arming Abbas and company's hunch leaders, Dahlan and stuff, and creating problems for the people in Gaza, which led to Hamas taking over Gaza and kicking out Abbas' leadership from Gaza. Once they kicked out Abbas' friends, the siege was completely tightened. So they were, instead of sending 20 trailer of gasoline to Gaza every day, they start sending 2. Generators were stopped, working. The food supplies were scared. So the siege was completely tightening, and the reason they had hoped that by doing this, they will weaken Hamas's grip into Gaza and find another way in bringing Abbas and his company back into Gaza, and the American-Israeli program will continue. Of course, this didn't happen. So they kept tightening it, and they start killing people. They start shelling. And on November 4th, that's when it became clear that there is actually, you could read it in the papers, Israel is planning to attack and all that stuff. So it wasn't a surprise that this war was taking place. If you looked at your paper, you'll see it, Israel is planning an attack. It was pretty much clear information. And that's when the war happened. And the main reason for this, as Zahi said, is to try to force the US, Israeli, and Arab regime will on the Palestinians and have them accept solutions that are contrary to our demands and contrary to our needs and contrary to everything we believe in. And the massacre happened. But it's been happening forever. In 2006, they did the same thing in Jenin. 6 months ago, they went into Hebron and did pretty much the same thing. Suffocating Bethlehem with the wall is not, believe me, you don't see blood running down the street, but people are starving. People are dying from the lack of medication and medical attention and food and all that stuff. So what we've seen in Gaza is a graphic, your everyday naked graphic attacks on humanity. But this is happening everywhere else in Palestine. Even in the 1948 in Akka, just 3 months ago, they went into neighborhoods, of Palestinian neighborhoods, and burned the homes while the people were living in them. And it's been almost 3 months. The people are still living in hotels. In Akka, these are technically Israeli citizens. Palestinian Israeli citizens. So the attack on the Palestinians hasn't stopped. It will not stop until we defeat the Zionist idea. And the intensity of these attacks is also another clear, at least to the Palestinians, another clear sign that the Zionist idea is really cracking. When you go into Akka, into a neighborhood, and attack, actually, one of the guys that they attack is a guy who is for reconciliation and good neighbors dealings and all that stuff, and they burned his house over his family. So the Zionists are really not. The Zionists are losing the grip on their idea. Their idea is cracking. We need to keep the pressure on them. That's why the boycott of their products is extremely important. That's why putting their leadership into war crime tribunal is extremely important. Everything we do here as a community will hasten the cracking of the Zionist idea, and it's our moral obligation. We have to do it.